You will not believe what we're going to talk about on today's video. On the list has to be that typhoon that just happened in Alaska. I'm sure many of you probably didn't even hear about those hurricane-level winds since the reporting has been quite sketchy on this one. I mean, just look at what's happening there.
There's a huge storm in western Alaska happening right now, and people's homes are flipping upside down. There are homes floating away into the river. Here's a picture that somebody posted. These are homes floating away. And nobody's talking about it on the national media. Our local media is covering it, but there's literally hurricane force winds and flooding in Alaska, and there's silence from the national media. People's homes flipping upside down. I've been watching this guy on live throughout the day and last night, and I just saw his live a little bit ago. Rescuers are leaving in boats to go rescue the people whose homes floated away into the river, and the rescuers came back and they were walking by his live and going to the school, and one of them was carrying a baby that floated away in one of those homes. I'm going to play a clip from one of these live videos, and you can see him pointing at where homes used to be, and now they've floated away for like 4+ miles down the river. And I just need the national media to start talking about this, because Alaska is part of the United States. There is a national emergency happening here, and nobody's going to cover it.
Now, she's not exaggerating. These coastal communities were struck by 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and those are usually generated by Category 1 or 2 hurricanes. What's even scarier is the storm surge that came with those winds. It pushed a lot of water into these communities, and you can see the homes floating away in this live stream from a local resident.
The house way over there. I guess they stayed home too. Fuck, that's a cylinder. You know her number? No. Don't do that. That's what. Yeah, man, there's people at Midtown asking for help. Yo, Denny, you still on live? But then there was another house before that one. It was behind our neighbor. That house is gone, so I don't even know where it's at. There was more houses over there. Those houses are completely gone. Don't know where they're at. Yeah, thank you for the prayers.
Damn, Bernie John's old house is really.
This isn't Kipnik, Alaska. This isn't Kipnik.
Unfortunately, from what I've seen on the local news, not everyone has been rescued. Now, some local residents have been complaining about this lack of coverage and even the slow rescue efforts.
How many of you knew that a typhoon hit Alaska? It had Category 4 hurricane type winds and destroyed several Alaskan native villages. People woke up to their homes floating down the river, and nobody's talking about it. Right now, a couple of sources are saying that at least 20 people are unaccounted for, but it could be way more considering not much is being pushed out there about what's happening in Alaska right now. Supposedly help is on the way, but with FEMA being defunded and the National Guard being used to invade cities, rescue efforts are very slim. People are stuck in their homes floating down rivers, going into the Bering Sea. Entire villages wiped out. Please spread the word and let people know what is happening in Alaska, because this is mostly impacting Indigenous Alaskans.
Look, my prayers go out to anyone who lost their home or, God forbid, a loved one, but you can't just say this is happening because FEMA lost some funding. FEMA had a lot of resources last year, and people in North Carolina still spent the winter in tents and relied on charity for food.
In fact, one woman says her stay at a hotel by FEMA has run out, and now she's moving into a tent with her 2 kids until her home is rebuilt.
I don't have heat in the house. We can't live in it. There's no floors, but yeah, it is a concern, but I don't know what else. It's the only option I have. Yeah, it's awful, especially with your kids. It feels like you're really letting them down.
The simple fact is that many times these agencies simply do not perform their duties, no matter how many resources they have. Also, the media never really talks about these smaller communities, and we already saw that this year when places like Ruidoso got flooded again and again.
Oh my gosh, y'all look. Oh no. Oh no. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, dude.
The main thing we should focus on is why these communities were not evacuated when this same storm was causing havoc in Japan and was clearly heading towards the US. Someone clearly messed up here, and they should answer for it. But let's be real, accountability isn't really common in this country. I mean, we just gave a 50-month jail sentence to a horrifying criminal like Diddy. We're also talking about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell of all people. And don't even get me started on Epstein, because it's shameful how these evil billionaires got away with something so heinous. And now they're using their money to go against someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I want to show you her great response to all this paid criticism on the Tim Dillon Show.
Everyone that voted for Trump Vance, everyone was like, release the Epstein files.
Right.
This is not even an argument. It's not even debatable. It's not being a traitor to the president to sign my name on a Thomas Massie discharge petition to release the Epstein files.
Now, if you're wondering why these politicians are suddenly hiding the Epstein files, you gotta see what Tim Burchett just revealed to Tucker Carlson.
You said earlier in our conversation that members of Congress were compromised. What did you mean by that?
What happens is you're overseas, you're being told how great you are, you're sitting at a bar, and they know what you're into, guys, gals, combination thereof, drugs, whatever, and they'll hook you up, and you're thinking you're the stud. Next day, you're flying back to America. You're back front row at the church, and somebody comes up and whispers in your ear, "Hey, man, were you in a motel room with a girl in Istanbul or something?" And you think, "Oh crap." He goes, "Man, we don't want that out." And he goes, No, we don't. We're not going to put that out." I said, "If you can help us on this little bill, though."
And that is simply the truth, folks. A lot of these politicians on both sides are compromised. If you dig deep enough into pretty much any congressman, you'll either find foreign funding or some kind of shady past, which is often used to control them. Now, going back to Congresswoman Marjorie, she also said this on Tim Dillon's podcast.
I think Candace Owens has asked a lot of great questions, and I'm glad she has. I know others who behind the scenes are doing a lot of digging and asking all kinds of questions as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with what she's doing, but yet Mark Levin says that she's the worst person on the planet, and Ted Cruz thinks she's the worst person on the planet.
Look, I'm not going to lie. It takes serious cojones to go against the official narrative, especially if you're in the government. So hats off to Marjorie for standing up for people like Candace. And since we're already talking about Candace, let me show you a tweet in which she mentions the guy who was chanting USA after Charlie Kirk's assassination is only known by his first name, which is David. Now, this is interesting because that guy was all over the news, and yet he is still hard to find. However, if you've seen his strange response video I posted on my X account, you will know he appears to be a very shady character who could have very well have been working for some three-letter agency.
The first debater tried to persuade Charlie to adopt Mormonism, but the exchange drifted into a disjointed back and forth of opinions. The audience eventually booed him off the platform. Another speaker raised the idea of restricting gun rights for transgender individuals. Citing Donald Trump as an influence, he began to reference statistics and posed a question. Charlie's response turned to the subject of gang violence as a part of the mass shooting statistics. At that point, I did not see what happened directly. My head was lowered while I listened. when I heard a sharp crack. At first, I thought it might have been fireworks or a disruptive prank, so I looked up to the horizon for smoke. When none appeared, I realized it must have been a firearm. My friend reacted in horror, saying Charlie had been struck. His voice and description told me how serious it was. Based on his reaction, I believed Charlie had been gravely injured. I instinctively checked the security team's movement, though I have no affiliation with them. Realizing the situation was dangerous, I stood and shouted USA, not as a provocation, but to project strength, encourage others, and create a distraction that might help calm panic or even save lives. At that moment, no one knew whether this was a lone shooter or something coordinated. My friend was devastated. He admitted he admired Charlie deeply. I only knew Charlie through minimal content, but would never wish to celebrate harm to anyone. Because of my background as a soldier, I was able to stay calm under stress, focus on protecting and comforting my friend. Afterward, I called my wife to let her know I was safe. Once traffic eased, we left.
And speaking of shady characters, I found yet another guy who was walking around campus after the shooting with some kind of law enforcement badge in his hand. The only problem is that the FBI didn't show up for 26 minutes after the shooting. So who is this guy in plain clothes, and what kind of cop shows up to a crime scene in flip-flops?
Guys, let's get out. We got to go away, please. We're all working tomorrow's house right now. Yeah, or do what Tiffany told you. You're good.
You guys see him?
I did not see him, no.
Fuck is that guy? Julian's one of these.
But just like the other fake cop, we never got an explanation for who this guy even is. And yet Kash Patel cannot stop tooting his own horn.
The louder they are, the more they scream, the more they don't have a factual point to levy against me. I know I'm doing my job, and I'm not going anywhere.
Does he not see how people have completely lost all trust in him? He betrayed everyone on Epstein. He did the same on Diddy, and we all know how he messed up the investigation into Charlie's assassination. Frankly, it's a miracle that President Trump hasn't fired him yet. And speaking of the president, the legacy media is focused on covering his actions and statements at the Peace Summit. This video of him manhandling Macron has been going viral, and for good reason. However, the same media has been awfully quiet about what he said in connection with Larry Ellison's takeover of CBS.
Now, who's going to be the head anchor at CBS?
Not Nora O'Donnell. I don't believe. I don't believe. You know, there's a story that they can. I don't believe.
What do you think of
Well, I tell you
Vice?
what, Larry Ellison is great, and his son David is great. They're friends of mine. They're big supporters of mine, and they'll do the right thing. They're going to make CBS. Hopefully, they called it the Tiffany Network, and it's got great potential. CBS has great potential. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Look, we all know CBS was horrible, but I've also shown you who Larry Ellison is and who he represents, so I want to hear what you have to say about all of this.